Courtney Zach for the special interview tonight. Courtney is from the USA, Buffalo, New York. She's been in Seoul for over 9 years and is working on a master's in second language studies. She's pretty proud of the secret code she's created and uses when she writes stuff in her journal. You can find a mural she painted in the Haebongchon area, and she's currently working on 2 more around Seoul. Courtney's illustrated and written 2 children's books. The Terrible Tune That Came to the Zoo is her first book, and her latest, No Insects for Olive. We're very glad to see you in the studio tonight, Courtney. How are you doing?
Good. Thanks for having me.
I'm really excited to hear about the development of your children's books, and just kind of really excited to see you. I've been friends with you for a long time, so it's I'm happy that you're being so successful with your work right now.
Thanks.
So your background's in fine art. How did you become interested in trying to put this book together?
Well, actually, I changed my major at university to art history and philosophy. I didn't really enjoy art while I was at school any longer. When I came to Seoul, actually, I started producing artwork again, and I got into a lot of artwork, like starting to appreciate artists that like had more childish styles or cartoons. For instance, like Moreau or Yoshimoto Nara. I started getting into like Tim Burton and Ralph Steadman and Edward Gorey. And what I noticed when I was teaching when I was teaching in Korea, my favorite part of the day would be to read stories to the kids, and I get really into it and really animated into the stories. And so eventually that just kind of morphed into doing something that I enjoy doing, something I enjoyed looking at, something I wanted to read. So that's kind of like where it came from.
Just a natural evolution, it sounds like.
Definitely.
So where did you get the idea for your first book, The Terrible Tune That Came to the Zoo?
Well, I don't really know how I came up with the story.
It's a great title. We're going to get to the story, but tell us just the title alone. Tell us about that.
Well, actually, the title was last. What the initial idea from the book came from when I went back to Buffalo to see one of my friends. She had a daughter, and we were riding in the car one day, and the little girl started singing a song from The Little Mermaid, and we were trying to get her to be quiet, and it just didn't happen. And when I came back to Korea, I actually called in sick to work one day, and I just started drawing all these pictures about this little girl that goes to the zoo, and then ended up putting them in my drawer for many, many years and just forgetting about it, and then eventually it became a book.
Yeah. Well, it's really interesting that you're drawing your inspiration from the children themselves. We were lucky enough to have another children's author on the show recently, Darren Farrell, and he was saying the same thing, that it's the children that really, if you watch them, their inherent creativity can really come and inform the author about, this fantastic stories that you can tell. Yeah. So it's really interesting that children were able to inspire you. So do you draw a lot of inspiration from the children that you work with here in Seoul?
Well, unfortunately, I don't. Well, fortunately or unfortunately, I don't work with kids any longer. But I did enjoy their drawings a lot more. The way that they create things, it seems that their imagination is a lot better. It's more creative. It's more interesting, and they come up with these ideas that adults don't think of anymore because they're not. It's not reality. Right. Whereas they don't really care. They don't think about those things. So I guess I never kind of grew up in that sense where when I do think of things and when I draw things and when I design things, I like to just kind of free myself from reality and think about, things that are unrealistic. So I find them more exciting.
So how long did it take you to finish this first book? You said that all of these drawings were in your desk for a long time, and I do want you to tell us a little bit about the story itself, too, The Terrible Tune That Came to the Zoo.
Yeah, okay. The pictures actually drew about 6 or 7 years ago, long time ago. And my mother nagged me for years about turning it into a story. So in 2011, I finally took them out of the drawer and came up with a story to go with it. And then finally in 2012, I ended up publishing it myself. So it actually took quite a long time to do it. Mainly one, because it was my first book, and to actually get it started was difficult. Creating a story is not easy. It just kind of flowed out of me. Like, I would look at the picture, I would try to decide like a rhyme that I could say to like make it sound interesting or funny. then eventually I decided that it needed a song. If this little girl is going to sing, I must create a song to go with it. And so what I did is I came up with this, read loads and loads of children's books and listen to children's songs, and finally I decided, well, this is something that's easy and it'll be fun. And unfortunately for the parents, I don't think they like it so much because it's not supposed to sound good.
Right.
And
it's a terrible tune,
yes,
right?
Yes, and the children love to sing it terribly, or they just, the terrible tune, tra-la-la, and they'll just go on. And the parents, one of my friends actually came up to me and said, if your second book has a song, I will not buy it.
So it is a rhyming book, and it's working music into it. Now, we're going to get to your second book shortly, but now you mentioned right before that you self-published.
Yes.
What is the process like for getting this book from these pages in your drawer to book form as a self-published author?
It's actually quite a long process. First, if you do the illustrations and the book together, you have to Photoshop all of the illustrations. You have to edit the book. You have to decide which picture goes with which words and the order. Are there any pages that aren't going to have words and blah blah blah. You have to design the font. Not design the font, but choose the font, design the cover, design it from front to back.
Right.
The binding, you have to choose paper. You have to choose if you want coating and if it's going to be hard or soft cover.
Right.
You have to get ISBNs, copyright everything. I mean, the list is endless.
Yeah.
So.
And it did take you quite a long time to go through. But I'm sure you learned so much that was when you published your second book, No Insects for Olives, was it an easier process now that you'd gone through it once already?
Well, I have a publisher for the second one.
Okay. Well, we're going to get to that in a second.
Okay.
What was the reception like for Terrible Tune?
Well, when I went home last year in September, I did about 20 author readings at schools and at bookstores.
In Buffalo?
Yeah, in Buffalo. And the kids just absolutely loved it. I mean, I had such a good reception of the book, and I get fan mail from them now. And
fun.
Yeah. I still have it. I want to throw it out. But the kids really enjoyed the book. Actually, the only negative comment I got from the book, there's two. One person, an adult, said something was grammatically incorrect, which I don't care about because my grammar is horrible anyways. And another school, one of the teachers actually rejected me because they said the book was too violent.
Oh no. Is it violent? Do you find it violent?
I'll show you the picture, and you might just laugh because you're not gonna think this is violent at all.
Okay. Well, I'm gonna let you find the picture, and I am gonna kind of prod you with the next question.
Okay.
Now, I'm looking at this picture, and there is violence. It's a kangaroo punching a child. There's a little X to the child's eyes. Do you start with a picture like that, or do you start with the story? I know these pictures existed.
Yeah.
But did you kind of have an idea of where the story was going to go?
No, I have no idea. I just started making it. Just started drawing the pictures.
Yeah, that is the true creative spirit that I know of you.
Yeah.
You just sit down on the floor and just start going, huh?
Yeah. Well, actually, because I know if you ask me about the next book, I'll kind of get into what what I think, how I come up with these books, or how I don't. Okay. Well, we are going to move on to No Insects for Olives right now, because it is a lot different in a lot of ways, it seems. What was the whole process of developing No Insects for Olives? You mentioned a couple changes. One, you've got a publisher now, you're not self-publishing. But how about, let's just start from the development of the book itself. Okay, well, then I'll get into it this way. So, because when I, especially with this one, when I was looking back through my journals, because it just started off as pictures in my journals, and I'm going through them, and I'm thinking to myself, how did I even come up with this idea? Where did it come from? And then, maybe a couple of months ago, I was watching this TED Talk. Elizabeth Gilbert was giving this talk about how creative people come up with their ideas, and she was talking about herself and Ruth Stone and Tom Waits, and basically they have this idea. It's just an idea, not that they actually believe it, but that during the Greek and Roman time periods, they didn't actually believe that people came up with creative ideas. What happened is that somebody else gave them this idea, and they were just the vessel that helped to either paint it or write it or do something, but they weren't actually their ideas.
Right, it was the muse.
Yeah, they were the muse, basically, yeah. And what I liked about that was that it makes the person not responsible for whether or not the idea is good or not.
Yeah.
I really don't know where I come up with the ideas.
There's a freedom to that. Now, for the listeners out there, I'm going to describe the cover of No Insects for Olives. It's actually a very pleasant, mellow yellow, and then a very simple, oval-shaped, kind of bland expressioned spider.
Yeah.
Looking with not much interest at a fly. And so it sounds like we're talking about maybe a vegetarian spider.
Not so much a vegetarian, but a spider that doesn't like insects.
Okay.
His name is Olive because he looks like a green olive, as you can see. And he goes to find like what other insects eat to see like maybe if he would like that more. And just to give you a little spoiler alert, he attempts to eat poo.
Okay, that is a spoiler. There are some bugs that do that.
Yeah.
And I assume that he doesn't exactly find that's to his liking either.
No, of course not.
Okay. Well, you mentioned a couple of things that No Insects for Olive is about. What else could you share about the storyline of the book?
Again, just like the first one, it's like a rhyming story. So there's a lot of words involved, but it kind of flows through to like the story of this adventure that this little spider goes on, and it's really funny. The things that happen to him will make kids laugh, and hopefully, nobody's actually read the book yet because it's not out in bookstores yet.
Okay.
But if they get the same reaction that I got from like The Terrible Tune, then hopefully it'll be a good one. So.
Yeah. Well, you talked about this development of Terrible Tune and working with children and being creative and developing these drawings. Why do you think that you're responding so much to working in children's books? It seems like you've got creativity to spare. You could go in a lot of different directions. Why has children's books kind of caught your attention right now?
Well, actually, I am pursuing other things for children. So, it's funny enough. I don't like kids that much. I mean, I do like kids. I don't really want to have them.
Okay.
But I don't know. Maybe that could be part of the reason why I'm so interested in like children's stuff, because everyone else can have the kids and I can just make stuff for them.
Okay. Now, from the perspective of books, what did you learn when you were making Terrible Tune that helped you put this second book together?
Well, after the first one, I mean, doing anything your first time is very stressful and very time consuming. So now that the first one is out of the way, I feel a lot more comfortable with, if the publishers have a question about something, about the book, making the stories, I have more confidence that maybe it's not that horrible. With the pictures, I still think I need to experiment a little bit with the illustrations, but I think that I'm definitely growing as an author. It makes it more exciting, after the first book, that you feel like, well, you could do one, you could do more. And
right.
It makes it, like, okay, well, what can I think of next? So.
Well, is that how you picked up a publisher? Was it the success of Terrible Tune and the reaction that it got? How did you go from being self-published to having a publisher?
One of the this publisher I came across was looking for children's book authors, and so I had something to show them. I said, this is my first book. If you like it, then I'm starting to write this book. And all I had given them was the illustrations, and I said, I will come up with a story. And right away they said, yeah, we want to do your second book. So
yeah, well, that is really inspirational, I think, for a lot of people that have some creativity in them and they're doing some writing, and maybe they are looking at self-publishing, but they're looking at getting something out there. Yeah. And then once you have it in concrete form, to be able to bring it to someone and give them an example. Yeah. Maybe it sounded like it really helped you get your foot in the door of the formal publishing world.
Yeah. Yeah. I definitely think so, yeah.
Yeah, that's really exciting. Well, what's your approach for marketing? You talked about doing book fairs or book readings back in Buffalo.
Yeah.
But what about in Seoul? Do you have any marketing ideas for No Insects for Olives, or is that something that's in the publisher's realm now?
Well, with this book, first of all, I actually got a lot more sales in the United States. For one, my parents owned a store, so that helped.
Okay.
Yeah. Not a bookstore, but a store.
Right.
Also, at my age, a lot of my friends are having children now, or they're teachers, and of course, they're more than happy to support me and buy my book, and then from there, they tell their friends about it, or tell their family about it, and it just branches off. Here, it's a little bit more difficult because, unfortunately, unless you have it translated or you make it simple enough, the Korean population isn't that interested because it's just too difficult of a book.
Yeah.
But I mean, people just, if they know who I am, they want to buy one just to say, like, oh, I know this person, she wrote a book, so that kind of helps.
Yeah. So what will you do with No Insects for Olive? Will you go back home to Buffalo again, do you think, and take the book there?
Yeah, well, for now it's up to my publishers. Actually, they told me that they'd spoken to a distributor in Korea, so it might actually come here.
Okay.
But I do plan on going home and doing more author readings, so.
Yeah, that sounds great.
Yeah.
What kind of advice would you give for people looking to get into the production of children's books?
Well, for one thing, the first piece of advice I would give them is if they can find anybody that's either in publishing into have already written children's books or just have anything to do with it, to get advice from them first, because it does help a lot. Mm-hmm. They're always willing to give you advice, hopefully, and it could put you in the right direction. If you are willing to self-publish, it's very difficult, but I mean, it's definitely an accomplishment. So, I mean, it's not impossible.
Right. So just kind of the idea of stick to it, keep trying, do the self-publishing, and use use your social contacts to try to, push the book on the kids, right?
That's the best way to do it.
Set up a shop in front of the playgrounds.
Yeah, exactly. Go to schools and be like, hey, look at this.
So does No Insects for Olive have a song that is not terrible?
No. This one doesn't have a song, unfortunately, but it does have poo.
Okay. Something else for parents to complain about, I guess.
Yes.
Do you feel that this is a field that you'll continue to pursue? You talked about branching out and working in other aspects of children, not having them, but children stuff. Do you see future books in your future?
Yes, actually, I've got a third one underway. It'll be an alphabet book about unusual animals. I haven't decided. This one's going to be a little bit different. They're going to be short poems.
Okay.
Because I really like to write poetry, especially silly poetry.
Okay. So that's that Alfred Gorey influence, it sounds like, yeah?
Yeah,
okay.
Definitely.
Good. Probably less morbid and more with animals. So
unfortunately, I wanted to make this one morbid, No Insects for Olive, but my friend talked me out of it.
Yeah.
Yeah. So at the end of the book, he's still alive and he's having a good time. So.
Yeah. Well, I've got another couple of questions about No Insects for Olive, and there seemed to be a bit of a difference in the style, and when you're going about creating just the graphics for these works, have you always been a traditional animator and using pen and pencil, or are you experimenting at all with graphic pens and programs on computers?
I've just started recently. I've only done the first two books in basically pencil and pen, ink, and things I'm comfortable with. Now that I kind of have more free time, I've been experimenting with linoleum prints, with computerized drawings, and just different ways that I could produce, illustrations. So we'll see how the next one comes up. The third one might be woodblock prints, or linoleum prints. It might be something else. Who knows?
Yeah, I mean, you let the creative spirit fly.
Yeah.
Well, you mentioned earlier that one of the things that you do when you're manipulating your images is use a lot of Photoshop.
Yeah.
Do you find that is something that is an effective way for you to work with your images? I wish that the listeners could see the pictures themselves, because you mentioned that they are childlike, and that's your intention.
Yeah.
But that's also probably why children really appreciate them. Do you find that there's a balance that you have to strike between polishing something up so it shines, or leaving it kind of in this
rugged?
Children can identify that. It's something that they're familiar with.
Yeah. Well, do you know? I only Photoshop it to the point where I think it's enough. Maybe because I'm lazy, or maybe because I'm not very good at Photoshop. But
does the publisher for No Insects for Olive give you feedback on the illustrations or the text or anything, or they just accept it exactly as you give it to them?
Yeah, they gave me free rein.
Yeah. Well, that's really exciting. Really exciting. Can you tell us anything at all about what, beyond this next book, the alphabet book, what some of your other projects involving children are?
So the third and fourth book?
Or the third and fourth book, sure. If you have it mapped out already, we'll hear it.
Yeah. Okay. So the fourth book is going to be about, it's going to be something called Eating Monsters, where perhaps there's this little kid and he doesn't want to eat his food because it looks disgusting. So mom decides to create this monster, and she's going to get him to eat the food by telling him that it's a monster. And before the monster eats them, him or her, they've got to consume the food. And it's going to be the storyline of like eating the eyes and eating the ears and, you know, eating the teeth, who knows?
Yeah, for someone who talks about not wanting to have children, it sounds
Yeah.
like you've got a lot of parenting strategies kind of already embedded in your mind. So perhaps you should reconsider.
Well, I've got something else to leave behind now.
Yeah,
I've got my books.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. Well, we're coming to the end of our time to interview with you, and I was wondering if you had a song request that you would like us to play.
Yeah. Can we play Clap Your Hands and Say Yeah? How about In This Home on Ice?
I think we can find that. Courtney, I want to thank you so much for taking the time to speak with us at the bookend.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. This was fun.
Great. That's all the time we have for tonight, but tune in tomorrow at 6 for Sunday's edition of the bookend. We'll leave you tonight with Courtney's request. This is In This Home on Ice by Clap Your Hands, Say Yeah.